This is the Mobile Tech Podcast, brought to you by worldpodcasts.com. Now here's your host, Tech Girl, Miriam Joie.
Hi, and welcome to the Mobile Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Miriam Joie, and today is Thursday, January 24th, 2019, and my guest is no other than TK Bay. Hi, TK, how are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. I'm recovering from a little bit of a jet lag from Paris, but other than that, I'm doing good.
Yeah, I can imagine. And you're at work today too, so that's pretty hard.
Yeah, trying to catch up on daytime stuff.
I know you do video content for XDA developers.
Yeah.
But I also know you have your own YouTube channel. So where should people go first?
I would probably say most people would probably know me more from XDA developers. I've been there for quite some time. They gave me my initial break.
Awesome. We'll get you to specify all the great details. Anyway, we have some good topics today. The biggest one, obviously, you were just in Paris for the launch of the Honor View 20. You're lucky.
Well, I appreciate it. Yes, it was a very quick trip. A lot of snow, a lot of running around, but it was very, very exciting. Checking out the View 20 in Paris, and there was a few surprises. I thought originally, we heard everything at CES. And it seems like, there was a few more things.
So before I ask you to tell us about those surprises, I just want to ask you a question. I was really surprised you went. Like, very few U.S. media went. So that was like, wow. I was like, I'm kind of jealous. TK is going to Paris. I mean, I used to live in France, so I've been to Paris many times. And it was pretty chilly at this time of year, right? So, oof.
It's very cold. And when I used to live there when I was younger, I never saw snow in Paris. I was there for some time. And this was my first time actually experiencing snow, going around and it was a lot of snow. It actually stuck to the ground this time. Wow. It didn't just hit the ground and melt.
That is unusual for Paris. Like, I've seen snow like one day there when I used to visit. Yeah. So do tell, what was this thing we didn't know? What were the surprises for you?
So the only big thing that I didn't get at the CES event, which was what is the characteristic of the Moschino version of the View 20 as opposed to the standard View. And it seems like that what they were showing us at the CES briefing, we are actually looking at the Moschino version of the View 20 without having the Moschino box. So there's two variants.
The two colors we saw with no specific standout labeling were the Moschino versions?
Yeah, so the Phantom Blue and the Phantom Red are the two colors of the Moschino color spec. So there's basically
that's
three
what
colors.
I have then.
Yes, which is what I was surprised. I thought they were going to get us, that there was something else. There was the Pro, the higher end. There's the 8 gig 256 model, which is what we have.
Right.
And then there's the 6 gig 128 model, which is the standard version of the View 20.
So we got an upgrade.
Yeah, no, we got the top of the line without even knowing it. And that was my only confusion. They clarified it. There's going to be a box. The boxing experience will also be a little bit different with the Moschino, logo, the color, the wallpaper out of the box will show the bear. Those
so
little
it's a lot
touches,
like the McLaren phone in a way from OnePlus. Like, it's really very similar with just a little bit of skinning in the UI basically and a special packaging, right?
And slightly spec bump, yeah.
Right, of course, But look, what is that going to sell for? Because that's the thing to me, like, before we get into specs, because I know my audience has already learned a lot about the View 20 because I covered it twice at CES for them. But I'm just wondering, like, are they going to, bump the price in any way?
So the starting price is going to be about €560.
US.
So
euros.
That's the thing. No announcement of
Well, I don't
pricing.
think we're going to get this because honestly, I think if we get this one in the US, it's going to be through like some importers at this point.
Yeah, I think that's for the most part how it's going to be. The good thing though, it does work in the US. It does have US band coverage, which I'm really happy about.
Unlike the Honor 8X, which I love that little phone, but the one they sent me at least was not working at all in anything in the US that I tried. I actually had to take it to Taiwan on another trip, unrelated media trip, and use it there to actually evaluate it when I got it back in November. It was sad because last year's 7X and the 6X and the 5X prior were all, sold as US phones eventually. And even the initial versions worked somewhat in the US somehow. Yep. So anyway, maybe we can talk about that because I know XDA, you guys cover a lot of technical details and I'm a bit of a nerd. You're obviously a bit of a nerd.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, so that's good. So if you import, or buy, or if hopefully it becomes available to official channels in some way. Maybe just Amazon would be nice.
Yes.
Like officially supported, not sold on the Huawei sort of Honor website. But whatever happens, I would say that, would you agree with me if I say that this is a powerhouse of a device that really competes well with the likes of the OnePlus 6T,
Yes.
and the price is kind of amazing.
Yes, especially for what we're getting, because the view line I always see the view line from Honor as the powerhouse line, right? They usually release it first. This is like one of the first ones that come out outside of the Chinese market, and they usually just give it everything. They don't hold back. The best RAM, the best speed, everything, and they deliver it on it. It's amazing. The design's really good. The camera on it is very, very capable of producing like very sharp, very high megapixel images. And that's a lot of people are asking me the same thing: is which one would you go? Would you go with the 6T or would you go with the
That's a tough
V20?
question. Yeah, I haven't made up my mind at all. I don't know yet.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's a tough one.
camera-wise, I'm totally inclined to say the View 20.
Oh yeah.
But there are other things about it that, the software, look, obviously it's EMUI, whatever, Magic UI on this one is a lot better, I think, than it was in the last few years overall from both Huawei and Honor, depending on which versions you look at. But I just feel like it's still, you look at a OnePlus and how quick it is because of its super optimized, super lightweight skin.
Yep.
And it's like, that's where you're like, okay, yes for the camera, no for the software. But everything else about it, I mean, honestly, once you live with that full view display with a hole punch in it, you're like, of course this is the way to go. Like, it's so not in the way. Like, I always felt notches disappeared after some time, but this thing just disappeared seemingly instantly to me.
From day one, exactly. It's that top left corner that whenever you're holding the phone sideways, automatically your palm is already covering it. It's in an area where you don't even know it's there, and I mean, there's even an option to hide it, but I don't think it's even needed for that. That's one of the really good things about it. They've done a good balance, and I kind of prefer this over moving mechanisms as far as hiding the notch. Have to put like a slider. It is much more reliable and at least more durable. Yeah.
I mean, it's not as cool though. I mean, that's the thing about the sliders,
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of having an ecosystem of form factors for our phones. It's kind of lacking these days. And this great race to do a full screen phone has brought all these weird solutions, right? Like we've got the Nubia X with dual displays. You've got the Honor, Magic 2. We've got the what is it? The Mi Mix 3. We've got the Oppo Find X that is motorized. And the Vivo Nex S, which had was it the Nex S or was it Nex? I can't remember.
I think
the one that had the pop-up camera.
Yeah,
I mean, we have had all kinds of things, and I agree with you that as somebody who studied engineering, it's always going to be more reliable when you have less moving parts, right? No matter how you cut it, and it's hard to do IP water resistance with moving parts. So, of course, speaking of, we don't know if there's IP rating or if there is any. It's not mentioned for the View 20.
It's not mentioned, and I asked, and the best I can tell you that I've had a good amount of snow dump on it on Tuesday, a good amount of rain on it as well, and it survived quite well.
I'm sure it'll be fine. I mean, just don't purposely dump it in the pool is what I would say.
That would be my thing. Yeah, I did not have enough guts to try that on that without having the possibility of.
Well, you have two of them at least.
I had to.
You had
so
to.
that was So the XDA and Honor, where at least Honor was doing a giveaway through XDA for.
So that's how you ended up in the US, in France. I mean.
So I returned the second unit. Yeah. So that unit's going to be.
So what did you keep?
Lucky Win.
What color?
Oh, I kept the blue.
Okay.
I like the red, and I like the color of it and the way it shimmers. But when I held them both in hand, I felt like the blue was always going to be my kind of color to go to. So yeah. Sure.
Well, I think the blue and the red are both really lovely. And now that I've had the blue for a while, I feel that it's less striking in the dark. Like, so if you're in daylight though, like outside in beautiful California sun, it's a beautiful sunny day in San Francisco. I don't know what it's like in LA right now for you, but
oh no, it's the same.
It's gorgeous today. I mean, you go out there and you pull out your phone and like people will stop on the street. It's that kind of blue. And it's, I think, the V pattern as well. But I think that a lot of people just, I find it really weird the people who wrote about this phone that it's a little tacky or it's a little too excessive. I'm like, put a cover on it if it's too much. Like
No, exactly.
even the supplied cover will mute the flashiness of it to a point where it just looks like a blue or red phone with no flashiness anymore. Like, don't complain about that as a phone. Like, are you really choosing your phone for the, for the way it looks in the back? I think some people do, and that's why Apple, for example, offers colors, and I'm a huge fan of the XR in part for the color, or the 10R as it were. But the thing is, I feel like most people are going to cover their phone with a case anyway. So what are you talking about? That's irrelevant. Look at the specs. Look at what this can do. We've covered a little bit of it already, talked about the software. Let's dig into the camera a little bit. I love photography and mobile photography, and I know you do too.
Yes.
What's your takeaway on this interesting 48 megapixel? And before you get in there, I want to make a correction for last week's show. I did say last week that is 1.2 micron pixels, and I was incorrect. What it is 1/2 inch sensor. That's what I was confusing with a 0.8 micron pixels. Much smaller pixels actually than typical, which is the smallest is typically about 1 micron, 0.91. 0.8 this time, 48 megapixel, but a sensor at 1/2 inch, because of that many pixels, is a massive sensor nonetheless. And its Z-axis, the height of it, so that it fits in a slim phone, is extremely impressively compact, considering the size of the sensor. And I'm impressed with the optics on this, that we're not seeing too much distortions at the edges, despite this really low Z height, right?
Yeah, no, I think overall the sensor's performance is... It was surprising. I was very surprised to see how it performed, because initially, when you hear about it, you don't really have an opportunity to check out the original images. You'll see them, compressed, Twitter, news outlets. You don't put out the original files. And then when you start using it, and even when you jump into the AI clarity option, that extra update that they pushed out.
That's an interesting mode. Let's talk about that as well.
Yeah, and just that extended exposure that they do, just to be able to pull in more detail into that image, just to give you slightly more detail, it's been working very nice. It works great. It's recommended for daytime, but it works great at night. And I think it gives you the capabilities and the opportunities to just push yourself to try to take better images, more quality, and just think about your subject and not having to be too close to it to have to take that good picture.
Right. So also, I did mention this last time on the show, but it's f/1.8, so we've got a pretty decent lens speed and aperture there by default. So here's the questions I have for you. I have obviously had the phone, but I've been so slammed with other things, I haven't really had a chance to go on a photo walk with it yet and really ring it through its paces. You obviously have, and I'm sure you had a lovely walk through Paris in the cold with it, and maybe had the chance to play with it after CES when we both got our devices there. I'm sure. What is your take on? So there are three kind of standout modes. So first of all, let's talk about the just default auto mode. So people understand Like with the P20 Pro and the Mate 20 Pro, that 48 megapixel sensor has a quad Bayer filter on it, meaning that it's binning pixels in terms of chroma color, and it's not binning them in terms of luma, which is light. So what it means is you get the detail from light and you get lower resolution, but basically like kind of bigger pixels created from the layout of the Bayer filter. So what it means is that effectively the sensor can output either 48 megapixel or 12, like the Mate 20 Pro and P20 Pro have a 10 by default shoot at 10 megapixel.
Yeah, that's how they come out of the box.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So there's that auto mode that shoots at 12. That's what I've mostly been using, and my takeaway so far has been that there's a ton of detail even at 12 megapixel because you have all this detail information to play with. Especially in daylight, and at night it helps you gather light because you can kind of like create super pixels that are is effectively 1.6 microns at that point. And then so I'm impressed. I think the quality is solid. I haven't used the AI much, but when I have, it's been pretty typical of other Honor phones in the sense that it's basically bump to saturation, that's done some stuff.
That was the first thing I was going to say, exactly. Yeah,
but it doesn't seem quite as sophisticated, the AI mode, as what I've seen on, the Mate 20 Pro or the P20 Pro. Is that
implementation?
Your take too?
Yeah, I've noticed that both Honor and Huawei do implement AI slightly differently, and they're both of their approach. So you got the master AI implementation, which is generally built into the settings tab, and it's not something you toggle on and off as easily on the Honor devices. And for some reason, on the Honor devices, we get to have that mode where we get to see basically the AI button, and you get to select it to be able to take
Right.
that
It's
image.
interesting that you can, it's right there on the screen, whereas on the Huawei phones, it's kind of dug deep in the settings and turned off by default now too.
Yes, yeah, which is the one thing in the beginning when we first got the Mate 20s, they was turned on by automatically. So I like the implementation of how they have it. I think photography at 12 megapixel for your average user is going to be great because of the fact that the way I like to describe it, this is social media ready, right? You turn on AI mode, you point your camera, you take a picture, and 90% of the time you're pretty much going to be ending with a good picture and it's going to come out really nice. Where you go with, if you start going into the 48 megapixels size sensor, I think that's going to be where you need to start planning a little bit more and try to do more maybe manual or go in and try to do more.
Let's talk about the dedicated 48 megapixel mode in a sec. I just kind of want to focus on auto for now with 12 megapixel. I personally feel that this is very competitive, definitely honestly better than the OnePlus 6T. Not quite as good as Mate 20 Pro, P20 Pro, but pretty damn great for 560 in the case of our special edition euros, which would pretty much one-to-one translation. If any manufacturer who sells a phone in Europe and the US usually has to be very close within $20 to $50 in price, right?
Yeah, so it's like $560 for the regular and $649 for the Moschino one.
Okay, so that's $649. Okay, well, anyway, the point is that we're talking about a phone that's going to retail for around the same price as a OnePlus 6T regular, anyway, right? So that's pretty impressive. If you want a better camera, it's definitely the way to go. I've also noticed, and I want to get your feedback on this because you've obviously been at the event and maybe you've been able to poke around and ask the right people. But when I tried aperture mode, which is hidden, by the way, you have to go into the other settings to get to it.
It's a mode now, yeah. It's no longer
a mode,
building.
which is nice. Yeah. I was really impressed with how good it was at defining front and back. And obviously that would make sense since there is a time of flight camera as a secondary camera.
That's where it kicks in.
Are they actually using that camera already for this kind of stuff? Is this just in their future proofing, or is it really, and for games like we saw at CS, or is it really there for imaging right now?
It's in there for a couple of modes. The aperture mode, they didn't mention if the aperture mode was using it, but I would imagine that's where it's there. It's also used in the AI skinning mode. If you go into the camera and you start using that beautification option where it thins out your subject, so that it's turned on in there. So it's actually being used, just not being put in the forefront to a lot of the things that we use in it. They're also trying to use it for better. They're gaming, I guess, the way you said it exactly. That they're doing that skiing game. There was supposed to be like another game that they were going to bring in where it just basically mimics you by having an avatar dance next to you. They also showed that at the launch event. There's more things coming out. They did say that within the next couple of weeks, more games will be released on the Play Store to be able to augment some of those, the time of flight sensor that we have on the back. Okay. But as far as aperture mode, you're right. I saw that too.
It's good. So I'm wondering if it's using
great subject isolation.
It's got to use that camera because that's the only way you're going to be able to get that, right?
Exactly.
Actually, I found that portrait mode, by the way, as an aside, probably because I wasn't using it right. I wasn't shooting a person. That's typical me. Like I use the wrong mode for the wrong things. But I was shooting a vase or something with portrait mode and indoors in good light, but not like great light. And it wasn't good. Like it just, I don't think it's because it was looking for a face and it didn't know how to cut it out properly.
That's exactly what it does for me too. When I tried using it, it's like I don't see a face because I was trying to use it to isolate the actual View 20. I was using two View 20s. It's cheesy.
That's awesome.
But so I'm using View 20 to shoot a View 20, and I was trying to use it, and it kept telling me that I couldn't find it, and I literally had to take almost 6 pictures before I got one that looked decent.
Right.
But yeah, I think it's definitely when you want to take that good subject isolation, flip over to aperture mode.
Aperture, yeah.
Yeah, skip portrait. Portrait is purely for people, yeah.
Unlike the Pixel 3 series that are using, you can basically, they do AI on anything. Like you just put portrait mode on and you point at whatever and it just like, like front depth, rear depth, it's got it figured out. And I think that's the power of Google's AI data set, really, right?
Oh man, yes.
It's the best in the world. So for obvious reasons, I look at all the Google images out there that are stored and cataloged and archived and whatever. Anyway, and Google Photos, all the personal photos from people that have been kind of like, analyzed for all their content. I know that sounds creepy, but don't let that bother you because I think, honestly, I don't think Google's doing anything that's, beyond anonymous data. They just want to learn what to identify in these photos, not what is in these photos.
It helps the greater implementation of their software. If anything, You're helping
It's
improve it.
crowdsourcing.
Exactly.
I mean, you're
It's
just purely how do you think Google Maps works so well?
Of course.
Why do you think it's better than Apple Maps? Because a lot of people run it, and then there's Waze on top of that, which they get data from and send data to and work with each other. But the reality is that most of Uber and Lyft drivers use Google Maps in the back end. And they drive all the time. Most, and if they don't use Google Map in the back end of their own Uber and Lyft apps, they're using Waze on purpose because it's very good for them, for these drivers. So the end result is you're crowdsourcing the best possible commute data, and you see that when you are in areas like the Bay Area, LA, where the data is incredibly good. And in other parts of the world where I've been, Google Maps just falls apart when it comes to giving you really good direction in terms of timing in rush hour because it doesn't have the data, right?
No, there's not that many people are using it that are in traffic. Exactly.
So it's really impressive. Anyway, back to the View 20. I wanted to kind of go quickly on one thing. I'm not really that excited about the night mode on that phone. And I want to ask you some questions. Maybe, again, you poked around and found out if you think, is this similar to what we have on the Huawei phones insofar that it stabilizes frame after frame? Because I found a little more blurriness than I expected in that mode.
I'm going to say that I've seen some similar. If I had to, when I did compare the two, because I did have my Mate 20 Pro in my other pocket when I was walking around.
Yeah, me too.
So it tends to, the Mate 20 Pros tend to still have better photos coming out in night mode, especially with the extended exposure. They're not too far off, but if I put them next to each other, you definitely pick the Mate 20 Pro. It's easy to see it. The colors look better. The sharpness of the image is still there. In the few images that I did have an opportunity to play with at night, like taking a picture of the Eiffel Tower or even going to the Arc de Triomphe, it performed okay, but because I had the opportunity to compare, it just did not. It's not there yet. I hope they can fix that in software. It's just that the sensor is different.
Go on.
No, it's just the sensor information that we have here is great, but I think since we've had the device, we've only received one update, and that's for AI clarity. And I don't think they really did much on the night mode.
Correct. The thing to me is the night mode is all the Honor phones had a night mode, but it wasn't implemented like the Huawei night mode, which meant like it didn't stabilize. You had to be on a tripod. Yeah. Now this seems to stabilize,
and it's intended to be handheld. This is
so at least I just want to make sure that is intended to be, because I'm super steady with my hands, so sometimes I think things are doing something, but they're not. It's just me being really steady. Yep. So that's interesting. And so let's talk about those 48 megapixel modes, because I haven't really had a chance to play with them. They recommend, so there's a high clarity mode and a regular 48 megapixel. The regular 40 megapixel is just like the regular 40 megapixel on the Mate 20 Pro and the P20 Pro, right? It's you're getting a raw image. You probably want to turn raw on at that point, and then you go nuts in your favorite, Photoshop, whatever it is you're using for on your hopefully on a big screen to get some crazy photos out of stuff. Fair enough, but most people are not going to do that. Yeah. So then there's this high clarity mode, and tell us a little bit about how that works.
So the best way to describe it is if you combined the extended aperture mode, or the basically long exposure that they're trying to do with night mode, with the 48 megapixel sensor, but using it obviously to take colored images. Their basic approach to this is giving it more time to absorb as much light as it can and to get as much detail. So it's taking multiple images and stitching them together to try to give you the best, clearest image, and so that you can zoom in as high as you can. But it's not, unfortunately, it kind of forces it to not be great for moving subjects. This is purely for landscape, buildings, walking around Paris at night, things like that. And for that, it does well. So
you mentioned zooming. Does the zoom work in 48? That you still get benefits?
Zooming in post after the effect. So
not during. Okay, you're cropping.
Yeah, exactly. But that's the reason why I said what I appreciate having something like that on a handheld camera. There's limitations of what we can do, right? So we have devices that try to put in optical zoom, and we saw that with the P20 Pro, and that was just massive. 3 times optical, and then you had the 5 times hybrid zoom. That just kind of like magic. First you turn it on, and you get that jittery a little bit, and then boom, it just stabilizes. And I was like, what the heck am I looking at? And so what we have here is obviously just they went the other way. They just said, look, we'll give you a higher megapixel sensor, take a much better picture, and then you can crop in. It's kind of like filming in 4K and exporting in 1080p.
And so in 12 megapixel regular auto mode, that when you zoom on the screen, like not after the fact, does it do any kind of, pixel binning, fancy, like PureView did on the Nokias back in the day?
There's a little bit of pixelation, yeah. So you start seeing they're trying to do a good job of making it so that you can zoom in, because there's really no optical zoom here, right? They give you option to jump in between 1 and 2, but that's really more digital. And then the further you zoom in, unfortunately, the 12 megapixel, I would not recommend zooming in, and even if you're trying to take images, unless you're really close to your subject.
Yeah, so basically take them at 48 megapixel, preferably in high clarity mode if you can, and then crop them.
And crop them, and and then run them through your favorite filter, because the AI mode doesn't turn on, even though it's AI. It's AI clarity, but it's not the same as the AI 12 megapixel sensor.
So let's speak one last thing about the camera that I want to know. That again, you might have poked around the right people to ask that I'm not sure about. How does this have optical image stabilization, or does it have AIS, like the AI stabilization?
Yeah. I was going to say it's not E, it's AI.
That's what Connor and Huawei say.
So it's an AIS implementation, no optical, unfortunately.
And it's good, right? I mean, so far I've seen it. I've had some very clear pictures at night, so it's obviously working.
No. We needed something like that to be able to even pull out having night mode on in handheld, as opposed to needing a tripod, or even trying to do AI clarity with that 48 megapixel, because you're never going to walk around with that.
Basically asking, is that also on when you're just doing regular auto mode, basically,
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's...
So it's always on. So that's the thing, folks. We're getting to the point, and this is exciting to me, is that I've always said it, like, no OIS, go home, right? But I think I'm revisiting that. I think since the P20 Pro, I've learned that I knew this was going to eventually happen. You throw enough computational photography behind this, and you can stabilize in real time by cropping it a little bit if you have to. But that's why the big sensor. You can crop all you want at that point.
And we get some of those cool video effects too for like AI, the AI color option. That subject isolation by black and white for everything in the background, and your subjects in full color. So it looked great. I love that on the Mate 20 Pro, and that we have it on the View 20. It looks great.
Wow. So it's trickle-down economics, folks. You can spend half the money and get all the goods.
Yeah, get all the features for less.
Let's talk about some other aspects of the phone. So we've talked about the time of flight. We've talked about the camera in great detail. 4,000 milliamp hour battery is freaking awesing.
Amazing,
There's really nothing else to say than that. And the battery life is just like the Mate 20 Pro and P20 Pro, just keeps on going, right?
Thanks to Magic UI 2.0.1. It's definitely really good at it. Some people may say it's aggressive as far as memory management, but it's great for battery life. And having a 4,000 I think should be the standard. We know they can fit a 4,200 milliamp battery in a smaller body than the View 20. So we know, we should start there. 4,000 is the minimum at this point.
Absolutely. And then at least for Android. And then we've got the Kirin 980, which is a massive powerhouse, which also is on the Mate 20 Pro. Yeah. Mate 20, Mate 20X. So
and the Magic 2.
I'm all right. And I personally noticed the performance on this phone. I mean, it's not OnePlus 6T's fast. Like OnePlus 6T is just the fastest phone I've ever freaking used in my life. It is so freaking fast, especially with the McLaren edition that I use every day that has 10 gigs of RAM. You just keep opening apps. Just keep going. Just forget it. Just open those apps.
Don't worry about memory management. Just keep going. Yeah,
ever.
Exactly.
It's insane. But I'm very impressed with considering it's a highly skinned OS and it's not really Huawei and Honor's forte to have super high performance. This thing screams.
I think of course, it's the right combination too. I think the 8 gigs of RAM kind of compensate for the playground for them to keep all these apps running in the foreground. And you're right. Of all the other devices, I mean, I would almost be tempted to say that it runs smoother than the Magic 2 because I've had some time spent with the Magic 2 as well.
I haven't, but all I'm saying is Honor and Huawei phones never been the phones I look up to for pure performance in terms of like everyday day-to-day interaction. But I have to say, in the last year, that's changed, and I'm definitely seeing it on the Honor View 20. Another thing I wanted to point out that you mentioned in your video, which I will put in the show notes, your first impressions video on the View 20 Pro, is, and I noticed this on mine too. There's all these weird little sensors on top. Where the headphone jack is, where it looks like an R blaster, but there's a secondary mic, and there's another little window there, and I couldn't figure out what that was for, and I finally did.
Oh, good!
It's the face detection sensor. It's the thing that's normally behind glass that detects whether you're making a call and turns the screen off.
Oh, you
that is up there. Yeah, the long window is the face detection sensor, and the short window is the IR blaster. And if you look really carefully, like pick up your favorite magnifying lens, like stereo magnifiers. I have like a whole bunch here for electronic work, and put them on and look in that thing. It's angled at about 45 degrees from the vertical. And so what I'm saying is it's basically just, it just shines. Like you're holding your phone, and even if you shine a beam 45 degree up from your ear, like it's gonna hit your head. It's not gonna hit the ceiling, right?
Yeah.
Unless you hold your phone really high up on your ear. So that's how it works. That's what they did.
Wow. Okay. Well, that makes sense because I always wondered like where are the other sensors, right?
And if you look right, the earpiece is also on that edge.
It is. It is very, very much pushed all the way as far up as you can. It was one of those things that, they just don't include in the specification sheet. I knew the IR blaster was there because that's obviously the remote app is in there and I tested it out. But okay, good to know. I assumed they were both for the IR, but I guess that's...
Me too, that's my first assumption. I'm like, but there's no reason, unless it's bidirectional IR, why would there be two windows?
Yeah, no, exactly.
And then if you look in the long oblong one, you see there's clearly two sensors. There's an emitter and a receiver. And that's just pure infrared. Bounce a beam, get it back. If it scatters... you got, something, if something's in the way. If it doesn't, then nothing's in the way.
I got to borrow some of your equipment someday. Yeah, check that out.
Well, I mean, if you have you don't even need a microscope, like you can buy these just basically like the one I'm using is 3-time magnifier. It's just like, it's one of the things like the jewelers wear, that's got two lenses.
Mm-hmm.
You see surgeons wear them too. You can buy relatively affordable ones on eBay. They come straight from China, so you don't pay for Zeiss optics like hundreds and thousands of dollars. I think mine was like less than $100. 3-time magnifier. When you're soldering, fine soldering or doing some surface mount work, it's great.
Well, it's perfect. I think the design speaks to itself. You're right.
Yeah.
Good implementation.
So basically, in a nutshell, going over the View 20. I love the display. I love the hole punch. It's really great. I want all my phones like that, or obviously full screen. I'm a little bummed. There's still a bit of a chin. I really, really want, and I hope Samsung does this with the S10. I really want an Android phone to be like Apple, have zero. I have exactly the same amount of bezel all the way around, even if there is a hole punch,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No,
because come on, it's time, guys. It's been a year and a half since Apple introduced the notch. Right? Get your shit together.
And I think everybody focuses on removing the top notch, but they don't really consider the fact that they always do include that little amount at the bottom.
Yeah, and I understand it's an IPS panel. It does really need backlight and stuff. So from the edge, but find a solution, okay, guys? Like, come on. And then the other thing is, again, performance is great. Camera is interesting. The 20. I haven't used the front camera, the 25 megapixel, very much. Seems like a little overkill to have that big of a sensor pixel count. Does this thing do pixel binning? Does it output lower than 25 megapixels? Do you know anything about it? I haven't used it.
I haven't tested mostly. So I'm going to say that it definitely I'm with you on the whole. It's too much power for what it generates. Mostly because I think it's not being used at the full potential. It's a 25 megapixel camera sensor that still only outputs 1080p video, and with the front, we gained HDR mode, which is nice. That's something that did trickle down from the Mate 20 Pro. It's better than the previous generations of front-facing cameras. I can say that it's better than previous Honor devices that we've had. And it's better in sense of basically better for subject isolation, and with the HDR mode, just giving you a little bit more focus, and it doesn't just overblow everything out in the background. Is it the best? Is it as good at, I would say maybe like the 6T? I still think the 6T takes better front-facing pictures.
I think the Pixel 3 series take incredibly good.
Hands down.
Right? Like
that
if you want a
wide-angle
selfie,
lens,
buy a Pixel 3. Just call it a day. Don't even go to an iPhone. Forget it. You're done. Or a Galaxy. I think the Galaxies are pretty damn good too.
They're pretty good. Ever since I got my hands on a device that has a wide-angle lens with the LG devices,
exactly. You want it, right?
You want to have that wide-angle lens. When in doubt, go wide-angle. That's just
totally.
Yeah.
When in doubt, go wide.
Exactly.
So let's see what else we've covered. Performance, battery. I mean, look, I think this is a leap forward if you
It is.
compare to what the View 10 was last year. I mean, the View 10 last year to me was a good phone. I liked it. I thought for the price it was competitive, but
Yep.
there's a lot of things about it that was kind of like meh. Like the camera performance was okay, but not great. The fact that it was a metal back, when we know for a while now that Honor has been making glass backs, like the Honor 8. Remember the Honor 8? This is a long
man.
time ago now.
I was in
Almost
San
3
Francisco
years
for the
ago.
launch for that. Yeah,
so
yeah,
was
yeah.
I.
Yeah.
And we're talking almost 3 years ago. 2.5 at least since that came out, and that had the really crazy micro etching on the glass back. So the fact that they made phones like the View 10 that had metal again in the back, I was like, guys, I know you can do better than that. So this is really, to me, like, and you look at in what difference a year makes. Like, holy crap, it's insane! Like how much we've moved forward in a year.
I think they've learned a lot from even the Honor 10. If you notice, the Honor, obviously, so the Honor 8, Honor 9, Honor 10 have always been I would say they're sexy phones.
Yeah,
if there's a better way to
sexy
describe
phones,
because there's
yeah.
different. The View I felt like was the powerhouse. The Honor 10 or the 8, 9 series have been the sexy phones, and then they came out with the Play edition,
Magic.
which is Magic was around, but remember the last
That was
iteration
the
of Magic
design.
was
To me, that's the design phone. Like
so that
the
goes to
pie
the
in the
design.
sky. What can we do that's crazy phone?
Exactly, pushing the envelope, getting that new design. And then the only other thing that we saw last year that was new was the Play edition, which was kind of like their gamer edition.
And I thought for the money, that was right on point. It's up there with Pocophone F1, with a whole bunch of others.
You had the Kirin 970 at the end of the year, which was still a powerful, CPU, and it was optimized for games, for PUBG, all of that. And you were punching out, 40 frames per second, where most devices could only do like 30 or 24. So it was just really, really nice. And I think they've learned from that, and that kind of put them on, and that's one of the reasons why we see the View line now is trying to combine, that good design plus horsepower plus performance. It's just I'm happy with the way this is going. Let's put it that way. I'm happy, and I want to see more.
As I said in my unboxing video headline, if this is the direction phones are going to go, and it's only January, holy crap balls.
Exactly.
I mean, seriously, we're in for an incredible year, guys. Okay, it's going to be great.
It is.
Because this is a $560 phone. Whew, I'm getting warm just talking about it. Like, I need to fan myself. This is exciting. Really great phone. It's slim. It feels great in hand. If I had to nitpick, I would like a lighter UI, but I've been saying that for years. I've been recommending to the Honor team for a while now that they do Android One, but will that happen? I don't think so. I'm thinking not for China and stuff, but I'm talking about, or even India, but I'm talking for like the West.
Yeah.
Will that stick? I don't think so. They'd have to go Qualcomm really to do that, right?
Yeah.
I think simply
Well,
because
especially with the
politically,
update.
it would make more sense too. But look at it this way: it could be an interesting thing. What if Honor made phones for the US and the West that were Qualcomm and Android One? They might not have quite the tight vertical integration that they have today with their Kirin chips, but I think they could pull it off because they have the manufacturing know-how and the supply chain, and they could certainly give OnePlus a run for their money, even more directly. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. But we have to keep in mind, I think part of how the reason why one of the reasons why Honor's success is going so well is the fact that they do heavily rely on the in-house and no retail marketing. It's all online. It's e-marketing. They're trying to focus on heritage, which I think they pull on really good, but it just takes time for all the features to come down.
Yeah.
And it helps them keep the price down. And I think it would be smart for them to go back into Qualcomm's and try to bring in some stuff, some devices, especially for the U.S. market, because there is a demand, there is a need for a lot of people want to have more of a pure-based Android experience. And since we lost the unlocking ability, which we used to be able to do for Honor devices, development on devices like this have been kind of almost halted now.
Yeah, absolutely. So there you have it in a nutshell. Our take on the Honor View 20, which is an amazing phone for the money. I mean, I'm not saying that because that sounds so cliche. Like the OnePlus 6T is an amazing phone for the money. Look, the reality is, like, if you look at if you have any doubts, look at where we were a year ago with the View 10. Like, just think about that for a second.
Yeah,
it's just mind-boggling. My only nitpick, as I said, would be better software, and then I would just for shits and giggles, because it's not necessarily an improvement, but it would have been really interesting to see a second or third or fourth gen in-display fingerprint reader in that thing.
I think it's coming. I think if my nitpicking list could have maybe people, I mean, if they're listening, and I really hope they listen there, is I would have loved to have stereo speakers, honestly.
Oh, that would have been really better even. Yeah, I agree
on
with
a
you.
display that's this big, and so there's only one Honor device that I know today that has a stereo speaker, and that's the Note 10. And it does really good at that, and it's just beautiful. But I'm just thinking, you went this big.
It's true.
Just put in, yeah. I think we're starting to see it. I think almost most manufacturers, and we have it on the Huawei devices. So why not?
Yeah, absolutely. And as an aside, by the way, you know, I'm a big of audio person, a bit of an audiophile from my days of making audio for video games. The audio output of that headphone jack is pretty damn solid. I'm really impressed. It could be louder, but sound quality wise, they've most of the Honor phones in the last year that I've used that have a headphone jack have really had great audio coming out of that headphone jack. So kudos to them for not cheaping out on that aspect.
Oh man, that's a big feature. I love that.
You have to turn on if you go in the sound setting, you go digging in the deeper,
the Huawei Hisense.
Yeah, you turn on the basically the clarity mode. There's like the third from the top. It's like the pure mode that doesn't add anything. And honestly, that will really impress you if you're in audio. So good to see a headphone jack on a phone that coming out in January 2019. And I would like to say that, even though it doesn't have fingerprint reader in the display, which really is a gimmick, and I'm just saying that because it'd be cool, I really like it in the back, so I'm kind of happy it's in the back. And so in many ways, from a practical day-to-day use, this phone is kind of perfect. Headphone jack, fingerprint reader in the back.
Fast.
It's a lot of what we want.
And it has gestures too. They have built-in gestures to the fingerprint sensor. So
that's right.
That's also unique to them.
Is there any way to turn on double tap to wake on that phone? I don't know if it is there. I haven't found it.
Not yet. No, not.
That's another thing.
Yeah, no dark UI mode, no double tap to wake. They reserve those to OLED displays.
Oh, right. Of course.
We lose some of those functionalities. Yeah, they're trying to conserve battery as much as possible.
Yeah, no, I get it. It's an IPS panel after all.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on. We get some news items. That was a long but super awesome covered version. It's okay. That's what the podcast is all about. I'm really glad we dug deep. All right, we talked about the Pixel 3 series, and the reason I'm saying series now is because there is a very clear third entrant in that line as the Pixel 3 Lite. We've seen leaks. I know that they happened last week. I didn't cover them on the show because they happened while I was recording the show. I'm stoked about this leak. If it actually comes out as a real product, which I really hope, it looks like it's ready to go.
It is, yeah. With the amount of images that we've seen and some of the videos that have been running around.
Like, is this the Pixel 3 to have?
If nothing else, especially since the last story we were just talking about, it has a 3.5mm headphone jack.
And it has the same camera as the bigger Pixels.
It does have, so the back sensor is for the most part the same.
I don't care about the front.
That we have.
I'm just talking about the back.
Yeah, of course. It's holding the same sensor, and of course with Google's services, you're going to be able to get like dramatic images, great night shot images. Just the best quality images you can get out of, practically a device that's running somewhat of a mid-range, CPU.
It's Snapdragon 670.
That's
a pretty new chip.
Exactly. So it's one of those, like, you have to appreciate this if it does happen, and I'm hoping it does stick to the Pixel 3. Although in my mind, I'm thinking it's probably going to be introduced as like a Pixel 4 or something. It's just the design. I know that from a design standpoint, it looks exactly like the bigger brothers, I would say, brothers or cousins, I guess.
Yeah.
But I'm just super excited about it. Yeah, siblings. It's the better it is.
The word you want.
I want to say siblings, but it's the younger brother, right? It's the one that's just has a lot of the cool features and has some features that the bigger ones don't have. For me, having a 3.5mm headphone jack, I'm hoping we still have the capabilities of all of the different UI elements and everything, and they get the same update cycles. This would be the phone to get. Yeah.
Look, honestly, I don't care if it's plastic because plastic can be done really well. Do you remember the iPhone 5C? Wow. The plastic on that phone, it felt like ceramic. It didn't feel like plastic at all. It just felt like so hard, no flex. So it can be done right. Number one. Number two, headphone jack. Number three, yes, you get a slightly lesser processor, but who cares? If the thing can hit the $500 mark, wow. And think the other thing, 5.6-inch display. Do you know how small that phone's going to be?
Yeah.
Because this is an 18:9 display.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So it's going to be super thin in your hand. This is going to be the size of an iPhone 5 or of iPhone SE. It's a little bigger.
It's the phone that a lot of people wanted to see. When you're thinking of the smaller of the two, This is the size that we kind of wanted the smaller one to be. That's
so
the right
Google, if you're listening, when are we getting this phone? Because I want it.
I definitely. It's honestly the first time I heard about it, and we already know that they can do really good with 4 gigs of RAM. The internals, and it just looks like a really nice device, and I think a lot of people will gravitate toward this more too because of the price point. Getting the better,
we don't know what the price obviously is, but
whichever it ends up being,
sub 500 is what I'm asking for.
I would imagine it would be around that price.
$499 Google.
That magic number.
Also, 32 gigs of storage. We don't know if it has SD. It doesn't look like it does, so that
probably
could be a pain
not.
for some people. That's a big pain point.
I'm hoping that's one mistake. I'm really hoping.
What if it has micro SD?
But that's the thing. So Google went away from micro SD.
I know they did, but look, they went away from headphone jacks.
They did as well, but the SD one was a little bit more of the speed of the UI and the internals. Now we do support exporting applications to SD card, but that's always been kind of like overwritten or baked in. Yeah, it's a pain to bring in. Samsung still does it. Even Huawei's kind of, and Honor started to move away from it. Within
LG still does it.
LG still does it, and it, like I said, so it depends on the company that wants to bring it in, but it's not built in. So that's the concern. So that's why I'm surprised. But when you see 32 gigs, they're trying to probably going to heavily rely on online services. So they're probably going to give you like unlimited.
For some people, that's going to work just fine, right?
It's perfect. They give you full quality backup, and you're able to get free access to it.
I'm stoked about this thing. Google, listen, please, now. Do it now, okay? Please. I know you're going to cannibalize some Pixel 3 sales at that point, but I actually don't think so, because if you want a Snapdragon 8 series and you want the dual front camera and you want this even slightly bigger, like you now have 3 sizes to choose from that are really absolutely 3 separate sizes, I think this is dope.
Yes.
Pixel for the masses, we need it. Remember the Nexus 5, one of my favorite phones? Was it $350 or whatever it was? You couldn't go wrong with that phone for that money.
Oh man, back at the Nexus devices, back when it was affordable.
Oh my God, good times. All right, let's move on to some other stuff. Let's talk about the Meizu Zero, because that's not a rumor, and it's very interesting. So we all know that Apple, or Steve Jobs at least, would have loved this phone in some ways, because there's no buttons, no ports, no SIM card.
Nope.
There's only technically there's a couple of holes for the microphones.
Yeah.
But that's it. They've made a phone. So Meizu announced a phone that has no ports, no buttons, basically no holes is what they say. But of course, there's 2 microphone holes, no speakers. And you're going to say, well, what kind of use is that? So wireless charging up to 18 watts. It comes with a wireless charging pad in the box. It has an eSIM it supports eSIMs for SIM card. It has haptic, ultrasonic, or pressure sensitive piezo buttons for powering on and volume, just like the HTC U12 Plus. Which we know they didn't do right, but can be done right. I'm sure, like the home button on older iPhones, the haptic home button was a very good example of how you can do it right. And then it has, the speaker is basically the screen. You're either using piezo or something. I'm not sure. Surprised they didn't use that for microphones. Piezo mics are really good. And then, am I missing anything?
Well, we had the in-display fingerprint sensor. That was, I think,
right, because
there's no fingerprint sensor on the side. So, yeah, no, it's all.
It's crazy. It's the only thing that's wah is, and I mean, I'm saying that. Please take that with a grain of salt, because really, is a Snapdragon 845 wah? No, not really. But it doesn't have an 855, which kind of want to see on a phone from 2019.
Yeah.
But it's crazy.
It's a crazy design. I have to say that if it operates as well as they are saying that it's going to,
because it's a Meizu phone. I'm sorry.
So no, but that's the thing. It's really, it's almost like it's a feat of design, but it's going to be that. It's going to be just it'll win the awards on design, but it's the practicality that people are going to be able to use it, and just having the fact that just having these touch sensitive options on the side, they're great. We see those on gaming phones now. They're starting to implement them, like with the Red Magic Mars one.
Yeah.
But the fact is, they're not generally used as their primary interface, right? Because you're going to need to start seeing. It's one of those things you got to try, I guess. On paper, it looks beautiful. In concept,
Yeah.
I don't know if people are ready to just not have any wires, you know?
Yeah. For me, in terms of wireless only, I could live with it because I have wireless everywhere.
Yeah.
But can you imagine you're walking around town and you're running low on battery and now you're trying to find Qi wireless charging? Dun, dun, dun. It's like a video game. Your mission is to find Qi wireless charging.
Go find your local Starbucks and hope that their pads are working and just
correct. Or go to IKEA.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be you're going to have to tough to it. If you choose this device, you're going to need to be, just enjoy the aesthetics, enjoy the design, and live through the pain. You just have to do that sometime.
Totally. All right, let's move to the next topic. Cool phone. I'm looking forward to not getting it because it's going to be China only for sure. Speaking of China, Xiaomi showed a folding phone that one-upped Samsung and Royole.
Yeah. I got a chance to play with the Royole FlexBuy. Yeah.
Okay. Who's going to do folding on 3 ends so we can have a circle and put it around our wrist?
Yeah, we could just do the burrito, right? And just fold it
totally.
Well, okay. Well, so if you think about it, wasn't it? Who's the name of the company? Nubia, the Nubia watch. Remember back from IFA?
Yeah.
So they have that, and that is foldable, but it doesn't actually bend, right? So I take that back. It's not a folding hinge. It's just a folding kind of watch that goes around your wrist. This implementation, though, I have to say, between the options that we've seen, like the FlexBuy or even the Samsung F that we saw, I kind of like it. I like the fact that you can fold one end as opposed to the other, or just fold both if you want.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it's cool. I know they're not trying. I mean, in a way, they're one-upping Samsung and Royole, but I don't think that was intent. Like really, the full intent. The full intent was more like, hey, look, if you can do one plane, let's do 2 planes. Or no, if you do 2 planes, let's do 3 planes.
Exactly.
And then I say, go to the next level and take 4 planes. At least you can put it around your wrist that way.
Yeah.
I'm just being silly, but look, it's interesting. It's obviously a concept, but we are getting very much into this folding phone business. And as an aside, I want to mention that we talked about this, folks. You guys know this already if you listened last week, about the rumors of a Razr phone from Moto on Verizon that would be $1,500. And funnily, when I talked about it on the show, I didn't cross my mind that this would have a folding screen. And that's what we're looking at now. The second level rumors on this are it's got a folding display, which makes perfect sense. Because what I said in the show last week was I hope it doesn't have an actual numpad on the other half. I hope it has 2 touch screens.
Yeah, exactly.
But I was thinking 2 separate touch screens. Now we're looking at one single folding touch screen. So there you go.
I would love it. I'd love it. This is definitely a much better approach than what we saw with the original. Well, not the original, the first reboot. So I think this is nice. I really want to see a practical folding display. That's because right now we're looking at devices that either are too thick or too thin. Having it in a clamshell kind of a casing that does have the folding mechanism option there, I think this is a good option. It could work really well for them.
Yeah, especially if the outside display is a little bigger.
Yeah.
Because it looks like from the patent drawing, it has a front display when it's closed, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So if that is a little small but lets you reject call, accept call, basic stuff, shows you notification, you can scroll through it, basically a small OLED touchscreen.
Yeah.
And it would explain the $1,500 price. Essentially 3 displays, 2 displays as a folding one.
Exactly.
And 1 in the back that's front, sorry, that's normal. Look, this is cool stuff. And until it happens, it's kind of up in the air, but I'm $1,500 is a lot of money, and I know a lot of people are moaning and groaning, and I'm you want practical phone that is reasonable and can do all kinds of cool stuff. We spent 40 minutes talking about the View 20, okay?
Well, but keep in mind too that $1,500 is not too far from what you normally get from, let's say, an XS Max.
Exactly.
With, more storage than the base number.
Absolutely, and don't forget also that ultimately the end result is we can only move forward. People are saying phones are boring, and I disagree. Last year has shown form factor proliferation in the great quest of the full screen phone, and some of it was wonky and probably not good, but some of it was really interesting. And I think this is what keeps phones interesting. Things like this Razr design, things like that Meizu Zero, things like that 3-plane dual folding phone from Xiaomi. So let's not just pan that stuff, because even if it doesn't make sense today and it's too expensive, and eventually somebody will find a way to make it happen and make it useful, and they'll adopt it, and we'll probably end up using it every day. Look at tall aspect ratio screens. That's a thing today. Everybody's having that. And
exactly. Everybody seems to want to make them longer
hole
too.
punches, notches. Yeah. I mean, it's these are the stepping stones towards what we really want, which is a full display, right?
Exactly. And it's just, we want to see new innovation. We want to see new tech. Not, small incremental changes every year by, slight bump in spec. We want to see, push the limit, because this could open the door, like you said, to other things that could use this technology to make it even better.
Absolutely. And then the related to that, something I've been predicting. I'm so good at predicting stuff. I love it. I've been predicting, and I've been saying for a little while now, I think I mentioned on the podcast maybe a couple of times in the last year, that somebody needs to make a 21:9 aspect ratio phone.
Somebody's been listening to you.
Well, they have to, because look, the reality is this, is phones are too wide. Mm-hmm. If you look at the View 20, for example, it's pretty decent. Yeah. But if you look at the Mate 20 Pro next to it, it's narrower, yet it's the same size, right? Height.
And a bigger battery, 4200.
And so here's the thing, like, you can hold this thing and you can reach things better because it's narrower. So I think narrower and taller is going to be certainly a viable option. Mm-hmm. And because of that, I've said, 21:9 is actually a known aspect ratio, unlike the 19.5:9 and 20.5:9 or whatever else we've seen. So Sony is rumored to potentially launch an Xperia XZ4 at MWC with, wait for it, a 21:9 aspect ratio display and very little bezel top and bottom, no notches, no hole punches. I'm on board. Of course, it's going to be a Sony phone, so it's going to be a little disappointing, but you never know.
It could surprise. Yeah, no, I'm just thinking it's a little bit too long, but I think it has to be. You have to hold it in the hand to see exactly how that form factor. Because I said the same thing about the 20X on Huawei, the Huawei 20X at a 7.2-inch display. And then you hold it in your hand, you're like, this is actually manageable. This is not bad. I can actually live with this. So, yeah, I love it. I love the fact that they're trying to do that.
Yeah, me too. I think it's great. So that's some of the MWC and other rumors. I want to add a couple of things to the MWC table. But one is that LG's invited the media to an event. Mm-hmm. Right? It's Sunday, which I'm really worried is going to conflict the Huawei event.
They're always on top of each other. Yep.
Well, they're not always on top. Last year they weren't. I was able to do both. Yeah. So this is 2 p.m. is Huawei on Sunday, the 24th. And LG hasn't given us the time. So I pinged them and asked, because I can't go to both. And I want to go to both. So, but the thing about the video they showed in their invite, and it's a public video, it's not a secret or anything, is that they showed a lot of gestures. I'm not sure how I feel about gestures, like hover above the screen gestures, not gestures on the display, but gestures like moving your hands over the screen of the phone. What do you think they're working on here? What do you think their thing is going to be? And is it going to be anything we care about? Because we've had gestures over the screen for a while now. There's phones that used to be silenced by putting your hand in front of the screen.
Oh yeah, and you can even move between pictures and jump through things. I'm not sure. When I saw the video, I was kind of like, LG. I've had a struggling love relationship with LG. A lot of, it's basically just something that you want to see them, push the limit, but I want them to basically do it well. I love gestures. I think it's a great thing. They do have some gestures. We can even import gestures into them. As far as a whole UI being gesture-based and, having sensors or so on that can read you so you can basically put the phone down and interact with it, I would have to see a little bit more than the little. I'm hoping they're going to put out another teaser before the event so that we can get a little bit more hints into what it can offer.
Yeah, this Mobile Congress is turning out to be a logistical nightmare already, and I'm not happy about the fact that it might be a conflict because I want to be at both. So let's see what happens.
I really hope LG is paying attention to the other and that they know that,
I don't think they care. I think we're screwed. I honestly think so because, LG has always done it in the afternoon, and this, Huawei's already at 2 p.m. Like, unless this is at 4 p.m. and then we can run at the very end of the LG at the Huawei event and go over there. Ugh. And then the whole Samsung debacle.
And as long as they don't have it somewhere across town. Because I remember 2 years ago, it was between LG and Samsung, and they weren't next to each other, and everybody got out, and I couldn't find a cab, and nobody would even. I mean, I made it at the end, but it was just a crazy way to jump from one side to the other.
Oh yeah, no, I believe it. I'm actually going to look that up because we know where the thing is. It's CCIC is where the LG thing is going to be. Yeah,
and as you were saying, Samsung kind of also.
Huawei is at Italian Pavilion, so we should be able to figure it out. I have a feeling it's going to be a race. Oh, well, let's find out what time it's happening, and if they're exactly the same time, we're screwed anyway. So, but speaking of logistics for MWC, and this ties into our last topic, I think, sadly, I'm not going to be able to make this Galaxy S10 launch in San Francisco, even though I live here.
I was going to say, they brought it home and you left.
I mentioned that to last week, but I'm really, really annoyed with this. And I've actually asked Samsung point blank, like, are you understanding that a bunch of us are not going to be able to change our flights now? And we're going to be in Barcelona already, and you better give us a briefing in Barcelona, one-on-one. And they're kind of like, yeah, whatever. And I'm like, seriously? Like, F you, okay? It's like, I don't understand how this could have happened. They scheduled this thing in San Francisco 2 days before we have to be in Barcelona.
It is especially when people book their things for Barcelona.
Yeah, we've all already made plans to go to Barcelona. We all expected this thing to launch at Barcelona. Or if it did before or after, it would be at least a week or two before or after. Mm-hmm. Like, what were they thinking? Anyway, I'm just ranting.
I don't know if they're really trying to take the whole exclusivity, being by yourself and nobody competing with you in that at the location maybe or something. But I thought it was going to be, even if anything else, in New York, somewhere closer to the East Coast, as they've typically done.
Yeah, usually it's New York, and I can't make it, and I just don't care because I can't make it, because unless somebody sponsor me to go, I'm not going to go to New York. But this time it's here in my town, and I can't be here because I can't change my flights. I looked into it; it's way too expensive. It's just not justifiable. So I'm not going to do it.
I'm still trying to figure out how to get there. So unfortunately, I'm not covering MWC this year. We have another correspondent from XDA that's going. So for me, as you can imagine, I can just hop in the car, even get up to San Francisco. So I'm trying to reach out to see if we can get at least an invite for the XDA crew to get up there. If nothing else, by myself. Yeah.
Well, I'm sure it'll work out.
I hope so, yeah.
At least you have other people. I'm just like, what do I do? Before we get to our last topic, speaking of Galaxy S10, there's more leaks.
Oh, of course.
And we've seen that a blockchain wallet might be included in the software this year. Interesting.
That's interesting. A lot. I mean, when they say everything in the kitchen sink concept, they're still going at that.
Well, I'm not surprised. I mean, look, a lot of people are like, crypto, whatever, Bitcoin. I'm like, look, folks, whether you like it or not, that stuff is happening, okay? Oh, yeah. It's not maybe super legit yet, and it's, a bit shady, and, we haven't found a currency that works for everyone. But look, it's the future, right? Blockchain is the future. It's not a matter of just money. It's a matter of ledgers. It's a matter of keeping track of things like house titles, all kinds of things, like keeping track of valuable anything, data, things in the real world. Like it's the way to do that. And so ultimately adopting some sort of blockchain secure storage / ledger / wallet is a good idea. So it's interesting to me though that Samsung would do it, kind of like when they did Knox, right?
Yeah.
Like everybody was like, what the hell are you doing Knox for? And look at it now, like a lot of businesses are relying on Knox and certifying Knox as secure for their business. And for better or for worse, but BlackBerry used to own that.
Yeah.
And BlackBerry still makes that software, but they don't own that anymore because Samsung is such a big force to play with. So if Samsung, like it's the numbers you have to look at. If Samsung does a wallet, a Bitcoin or whatever blockchain wallet on their phones, all of a sudden that might open up a lot more secure way of people to do transactions on these currencies.
And they're offering encryption on them as well. Yeah. So from what we've seen, it's exciting. It makes me more excited to see what we get, and hopefully all the leaks and all the rumors and that we're hearing that are going to be just making it even more. I mean, they're finally pushing that we're finally getting a the 10th anniversary, the new edition of the phone, right? It's a new design, the punch hole displays. Just I want more. So, but
me too. I mean, look, I think Samsung does some good stuff, even though it's very iterative this year. You can't go wrong with a Note 9 or S9 Plus or even S9. I mean, like the reality is that that's still a really solid phone in January 2019. So, and here we are, like a month away from an S10. So, this is super exciting. And there are other leaks that I didn't cover last week, but they're linked in the description. I'll put an article by The Verge that has a link to their previous article, where we have photos of the three phones, the back of the three phones and the front of the three phones in some sort of case. And you can clearly see the designs, and there's clearly three sizes. So this is confirming a lot of things. So Galaxy S10, as much as I'm bitching about not being able to be there, I'm sure it'll work out. I made my very strong feelings well known to Samsung. And I think I'm not the only one, I'm sure. At least I hope not, because, it's like, I'm sure there are a lot of people stuck in the same situation right now.
Oh, every single, any major outlet that is not, even if they do send people, like you said, their main crew is already going to MWC. It's not a question of if, it's been booked. So it's going to be a challenge, but I think if Samsung does it right, they will have something special for you guys when your eyes are up there. And that just makes sense, because it doesn't make sense at all to just, to move it.
I know that worst comes to worst, and I want to bring that up for you listeners. I know this is what matters to you. I'll be doing a podcast at MWC, and I will get some video of the phone. And I know that no matter what, if I go to their booth, there is a press area in the back where they have untethered phones available. So I will make a hands-on video. Sure. I just am kind of heartbroken about the fact that I might miss out on review devices early on, that I might not see it and be able to provide you with content early on. That's all. And it's about you. You're the customer. I want to please you and make you happy. So that's why I'm bitchy about it. Let's see. Last topic quickly before we go is Google acquiring some parts of Fossil's IP.
Yeah, some new parts, something
we don't know about. So it's interesting to me because a lot of people are making a big fuss about this. Oh, Pixel Watch and, Android Wear is going to, Wear OS is going to come back from the ashes. And look, I don't want to be the bringer of doom. I linked to an article by Sherlyn at Engadget in the show notes, but there's also an article by Ron Amadeo, which is much darker because Ron is a dark kind of guy. The point is, these guys, they make good points. And I think, that's why I like their input. Ron basically says this is not going to be a Pixel Watch. This is not really a relevant thing. It's mostly, so if you dig deeper, here's what it is. 40 million acquisition. It's nothing. Not even regulators care about a $40 million acquisition. Compare this to the acquisition of the HTC team that Google acquired, and that's like 1.1 billion. Or whatever it was. It's a lot more money, and it's like was one of the top 5 acquisitions for Google to buy the HTC stuff in their entire history of acquisitions, to give you an idea. So, not the same scale. Secondly, Wear OS is kind of and I think Ron makes a good point. Maybe I'll link to his article as well. But Sherlyn makes a good point too. Is that Wear OS is just not really well baked. Okay, like even though it got updated recently, I'm a big fan, but I feel like, if after you use a Samsung Galaxy Watch like I have for a while now, or like a Huawei Watch GT or something, which is very different because it's more like a sports band turned into a watch. But you can see that there's a whole variety of products out there that have custom chips, like built from the ground up chips. Apple being the number one with the S4 chip. Like that chip is so much more powerful and power efficient than anything Qualcomm has on the table. And I'm sure that Huawei uses their own silicon. I'm sure the Samsung uses their own silicon because they have their own OS. Like if Google acquired a chip company, then I'd be like, oh, this is interesting. But I don't think this is going to result in a Pixel Watch or anything major for Wear OS. I think what it is here is they acquired, mostly from what the rumors are and the digging around people have unearthed, is Misfit technology. Misfit was a company that lived on their own and made really great sports trackers. Back in the day when I worked at Pebble, we had a partnership with them. They provided our step tracking software that ran on Pebble.
Okay.
Basically, Pebble ran the Misfit algorithm, and we licensed it from them, and we put it on our watch. And great. And Misfit got acquired by Fossil at some point. Good for them. And I'm happy for them. But they always had very unique technology when it comes to fitness tracking. And obviously, Fossil's benefited from that. But I think they might have been working on some stuff that was I think, beneficial to Google for the Google Fit app, for them getting more accurate data about what you're doing, where you're going, how you're living your life, which is what Google wants, because they want to be able to serve you your assistant stuff. Right?
Exactly.
So that's where it all starts to make more sense. This is not about Pixel Watch or about Android Wear, Wear OS. It's more of a bigger picture thing, and it's a tiny, tiny acquisition. It's just a part of their IP. Some people from Fossil. It's very interesting because Fossil is basically saying, we just make the design beautiful designs for all those different sub-brands we have, and we package them in unique ways with unique watch faces, and we put it on Wear OS, and it goes from there. And Qualcomm provides the chips, right? It's basically what the model here is. And don't get me wrong, Qualcomm makes okay chips for the watches. I just don't think they're bleeding edge chips, right? And they've basically been repackaging the same chip for a while. I want to see like 10 or 7 nanometer chips from
We need to see some
Qualcomm,
breakthroughs.
right?
Yeah, definitely.
And why not repackage some of those 600 series chips that are like the 660, 670 into an Android or Wear OS optimized Snapdragon Wear 4100 chip or something next year? I think that, or this year, that would be the way to go. Why they don't do it, I don't know. Maybe they're too busy developing Snapdragon 865 for next year. And I'm not going to complain about that.
Yeah, no, definitely not.
Yeah. So what is your take on that? I mean, do you feel the same? Is there another angle?
I don't, with the little amount of information that we have on the acquisition itself, I think anything they can do to improve the experience overall, either be it on the tracking or even, either within the watch or off, on the device, will always be helpful and beneficial for the users. We need to improve the experience with Wear OS and what we're doing. And anything we can offset, especially with the Fit, because a lot of people are starting to rely more and more on their watches for sport tracking. And Wear OS is not exactly the native app on its own. It doesn't have a lot of support for, like squint tracking, step counting, all of those things. You have to jump into Google Fit. And sometimes you end up having to use a third-party app. There are some manufacturers like the TicWatch. You'd end up having to download a third-party app to be able to get that data from your actual watch. So I feel like if there is a better implementation, and maybe this acquisition could help it, that, the Google Fit application works better, all for it.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see how it goes. I mean, look, we shouldn't pan this acquisition. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm just setting some realistic expectations.
Exactly.
And I want to thank Ron, despite his dark perspective on it, and Sherilyn for kind of like inspiring me to talk about it on the show, because I think they did a good job at doing analysis on it that I think is very valid. So that's it. That's kind of my take. I think we should wrap up. And I'm wondering if you can tell the folks, as you were starting to earlier, where they can find you online. Obviously, we know you work with, XDA developers, but there's all your entire own universe. So share your media handles and all that good stuff.
So the super fast way to find me, I'm TK Bay on YouTube, and on other socials like Twitter and Instagram is TKDSL8655. So I'll send those over to you if you could put that probably in your notes as well. But it's overall, I try to be everywhere. It's usually the best way to do it. And XDA is a great place to be, and a great crew. And I've even worked with the Pocket Now guys as well, Jaime and all of that. So very happy to be with.
They're great folks.
Great folks. Josh and Jaime are great.
Awesome. Check out TK's work on XDA developers, XDA forums. Good place to be. If you want to get down and dirty and detailed, this is the place to go. I get a lot of my awesome repackaged Pixel camera APKs from your lovely site on a regular basis. For those phones, cough Razr 2, that have maybe a slightly lesser native implementation of their camera app, but run on a Qualcomm chip nonetheless.
Exactly. We even have some ports for Kirin 970s. But not the 980s yet. Yeah.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
So that's something I want to check out.
Exactly.
P20 Pro, baby. There we go.
Exactly.
All right, you folks know where to find me. I'm at Tankgirl. That's TNKGRL on Twitter and on Instagram. You know that my handle is basically Tankgirl without the vowels, because, it was taken, so I had to be clever. And this was in the 90s, so this is way before even Flickr dropped the vowels, okay? And of course, the podcast is at mobiletechpodcast.com. We're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Pocket Casts, Overcast, TuneIn Radio, a bunch of places. Please subscribe. The RSS feed is at mobiletechpodcast.com, but you can search for us and find us everywhere. If you can't find it on a Mobile Tech Podcast, because those 3 words ping up a lot of stuff, look for Tankgirl, TNKGRL, my handle, and you'll find it as well. Finally, there's a YouTube channel that goes with this podcast. It's called the Mobile Tech Podcast channel, and it's under my name, so it's youtube.com/Miriam Jouar, my full name spelled out, Miriam with a Y. And there is like hands-on videos and unboxings and first impressions and reviews sometimes when I have time. But basically, it's just content visually that can help you with, along with my Instagram photos, to see these devices I mention every week and get you kind of like, that intimate, oh, look, it's like I feel like I'm there and I can play with the phone in my head.
Exactly.
Kind of feel, right? And then I want to thank our sponsor, who has been helping us for so long now, audible.com. Audible is really the platform to go to for audiobooks. If you love audiobooks, if you love books, and you need to, for some reason, listen to them instead of reading them, this is definitely the place you should go. Audible.com has a huge selection. They have apps for all platforms, and, you can subscribe. If you do so through the link in the show notes in the description, you will actually support the podcast, and you get 30 days for free, a free trial. So I would suggest that if you love books, and especially if you're like commuting a lot and you can't physically read a book, but you can listen to it instead, consider subscribing to Audible through the link and help the podcast. audibletrial.com/mobiletech is the link. That's audibletrial.com/mobiletech. And that will help the podcast. Thanks for the support, Audible. And thanks you, listeners, for supporting us by clicking through. That's it. Thanks for being on the show, TK. That was really awesome to have you.
I don't know. I appreciate you reaching out, and it's always fun to spend some time in talking nerdy stuff with like-minded individuals. It's always amazing, and I know we run into each other all the time at different shows, and we don't really get a chance to talk as much. It's more of the hey, how you doing? Got to go run to the booth
Totally.
before they leave or stuff like that. So yeah, definitely.
All the nerd all the time. That's maybe what I should rebrand the show. Anyway, stay tuned, folks, for another show next week. We'll have another guest, and hope to see you there. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
This has been the Mobile Tech Podcast with Tank Girl, proudly presented by worldpodcasts.com. You can visit us online at mobiletechpodcast.com.